Hi there, this is Sharon Vornholt, and today I want to talk about the 10 myths about probate and investing. And these are common misconceptions that I hear all the time. Now, most of you know that I've specialized in the niche of probates for over a decade now. So I've been doing this a long time, and I really know this niche inside and out. But there are a lot of investors who are reluctant to work in the niche of probates, and it's almost always because they just need a little more education. They don't quite have the knowledge they need to succeed as a probate investor. So my goal today is to bust a lot of these myths about probates, to allow you to think differently about this niche, because it has been my number one source of leads for more than a decade. And I want to show you why now is the perfect time to add probates to your investing toolbox. So let's dive into the 10 myths. Myth number one is that there really isn't a never-ending stream of leads. Well, we just went through that, but there truly is a never-ending stream of motivated seller leads. Now, some of these leads, some of these properties will be listed on the MLS with agents. That's true. But there's a lot of them that will be listed or that will be sold to investors. And the reasons are vary, but sometimes it's because they're distressed property. Sometimes it's because they need to be updated. And sometimes it's a time and circumstances problem. Maybe the personal representative lives on the West Coast and the house is on the East Coast. And it just doesn't work out for them to travel back and forth to be there physically to do everything needed to get the house listed. So there are many reasons why the property would be sold to an investor. Now, myth number two is that you have to know a whole bunch of legal stuff. And that, my friend, is just not true. So that's why God made attorneys. That's what I like to say. We do our thing and they do their thing. Now, do you have to have a basic understanding of the process? Yes, you do. And we'll go through that. And you need to know some of the basic terminology. That's a simple thing to learn. But you do not need any specialized knowledge, any bunch of legal knowledge to work in the niche of probates. Now, myth number three is that the probate process is complicated, so investors should just forget about probates. That is a myth because it's pretty straightforward in most areas. Now, for instance, in my area and in a lot of areas around the country, it's just the same as any other transaction. You need to write the contract at the appropriate time when they can sell the house. And I'll go through the process in a little bit. But so long as you follow the process in most areas, it's like any other transaction. You simply put the house under contract, and you need to be sure you're talking to the person who is the decision maker, the executor, or the administrator, jointly referred to as the personal representative. Myth number four is that investors are taking advantage of people that have to sell the property in the estate. That could not be further from the truth. When a motivated seller that has a property in an estate picks up the phone to call you, or they contact you through your website, this means that they are ready to move forward with selling the property. And if they have called you, they have made a conscious decision not to list it with a realtor. Maybe they don't want all those people traipsing through their house. Maybe the house needs a lot of work. Whatever their motivation is, you're not taking advantage of anybody because they have to sell the house. If it's in this estate, they've not done estate planning so that it kind of goes around the whole probate process, then they're going to need to liquidate the assets in the estate, and that includes the house. So this is a job. It's the business of settling the estate that they have to tend to. So you're not taking advantage of anyone. Myth number five, you need to be an attorney to understand the terminology of probate. This is not true because you can have a simple cheat sheet of terms. Now, you do need to understand, for instance, who's the decision maker and how did they get there? Now, that would be the executor. If this person was named in the will by the deceased, so they were chosen, that will be named in the will. And during the probate process, the will be validated, and they'll make sure that this is the correct person. Once again, this is attorneys in court work. This is not work you have to do. If there was no will, then the court is going to appoint someone called an administrator. Those two people jointly will be referred to as the personal representative. So the terms are interchangeable. Their duties and responsibilities are the same. But know that if you're talking to an heir, and it's quite likely that they could be showing you the house simply because they live in the area. There could be a lot of reasons. Maybe they're the person who takes care of all the family things. That person may be your go-between, but they may not be the person who can sign on the dotted line. That's only the person who is the personal representative. So it is important that you understand a lot of these terms. You know, I go through these a lot. I've done videos on these, and certainly that stuff is in my course, but you don't have to memorize a bunch of stuff. It will come naturally to you after you've worked in it a little bit. The main reason you need to know the terminology is so that you can have an intelligent conversation with the seller. Oftentimes they've had this, this event has happened. The business of settling the estate is dumped in their lap. So they don't know what's going on. They don't know the terminology. They don't know the process. Your goal in becoming a probate investor is to become the go-to expert. So that's your goal, is to know about the process, the terminology, and to be able to have a conversation with these people at a time when they are anxious to sell the property. Now, myth number 6 goes back to talking to people. I can never get up the courage to talk to people that have lost someone. I don't want to talk about death. I don't want to talk about the estate. And it's just creepy. That's what I hear all the time. It's just creepy. Well, it's not creepy. And I want you to just go back to talking to any seller, any motivated seller. You're going to have a conversation with them. You're going to have to eventually talk about your offer. But with these folks in probate, they have lost someone. That's how they came to be where they are, rather than another way, like an absentee owner or a divorce or foreclosure or any of the other ways that they could become a motivated seller. So you have to understand that, yes, they did lose someone. They are going to want to tell you about the property in most cases. And remember that a lot of these people, they have fond memories of the properties. They've grown up in the house. They've spent their Christmases there. And after they moved out, maybe got married, they still go back. So they have a lifetime of memories in a lot of cases. So what your main goal is to be a good listener, to look for visual clues in the house for conversation starters. But it's doable by anyone. And if they've picked up the phone and called you, like I said, they're ready to have a conversation with you. And you just need to go over there with the idea that they're people just like you and me. They have had an event that's put them in this position, but they have a problem to solve. And that's what we do. We're problem solvers that happens to involve real estate. So you go over there and figure out what they need to solve their problem. And that's myth number 6. Myth number 7 is that probate investing is so hard, there's no way I could ever learn the process. There's no way I can learn all of this stuff. So I want to break it down for you. And full disclosure here, there's a lot more goes on behind the scenes with attorneys and courts and all of that. But this is what you need to know. You need to know the basic steps in the process, and you need to know exactly when you can buy the house. So here are the steps. Very condensed, but here are the steps. So the step 1 is obviously someone passes away. The next thing that happens, and this may be a few weeks, it may be a few months, it may be a year after the person has passed away. They just put off opening the estate. But that is the next thing that has to happen. So once the estate is open, we talked a little bit about the court's going to do these things. They're going to validate a will, or they're going to appoint a personal representative, a PR, as they're called. Once that is done, then the next thing is the assets are sold. Now, what that means is that things that are not directly inherited, like I'm leaving this necklace to my daughter, that would be something that the daughter would just get. But things like real property, homes and businesses, boat slips, anything that's real property, certainly, these things are going to be converted to cash. And this is the way it works by law. And the reason is because the next step is the creditors get paid. So who are the creditors? Well, they're anybody that is owed money. It would certainly be if there were any mortgages, home equity lines of credit, or any things like that attached to the property. Those are going to be really up at the top of the list. So they're going to pay those off. Let's assume that the deceased had a car payment or credit card bills. So all of their bills get paid out of the estate. So the creditors get paid. And that would also include things like hospital expenses, nursing home expenses, and legal fees, and certainly funeral expenses. So we've gotten to this point. They've sold any property in the estate, so they have cash in the bank, and that's part of what the personal representative does. Legally, they're responsible for seeing that this distribution goes the way it's supposed to go, and that the money is handled in the way that is set out by the laws of the state. So it's a big responsibility. So once the creditors have been paid, then and only then do the heirs get what they've inherited. So you can look back at the process. All of these things have to happen. The estate has to be open. The assets need to be converted to cash. The creditors need to be paid. And the heirs are way down here on the bottom of the list. So don't you see how they would be motivated to move this process along? They can be very motivated because they don't get what they're inheriting until you get to this stage in the process. Now, once all of this has happened, then the estate is closed. Other things happen. A federal tax return is filed on behalf of the estate. Things like that. Those are not things you have to be concerned with. You need to understand that these people must sell the house. Okay, it's not an option. If it's in the estate, they must sell the house, which is really myth number 8. We've gone over this, and people say, well, they don't really have to sell the house. If they don't like my offer, they can just choose not to. They just choose not to sell it. Well, that's not the way it works. If one of the children in the estate wants to buy the house, they're going to have to buy the house. Now, that's something that's worked out, again, behind the scenes, but that's not generally the case. And here's why. Because if the deceased intended to leave their property, let's say I was going to leave my property to my daughters, I would create a survivorship deed, and it would just be deeded to them, escape all of the taxes and tax ramifications and those sorts of things that you have in probate. So if it's in probate, in almost every case, it will be sold to finish out this process. Myth number 9 is it's a terrible time to work in probate since we are in the midst of COVID-19. This is one thing I really want to hone in on, because there has never been a more perfect time to work in the niche of probates. And here's why. I want you to stop and think about what's happened the past few months as I'm recording this. So we're, headed toward the end of June of 2020, and the courts in most areas closed down at the beginning to the second, maybe the middle of March. So Remember when I talked about people pass away and it might be months or even a year before they open the probate? These are the people that are in the backlog of probates. They are not COVID-19 patients, not at this time. So there were some in process in the courts, and the courts shut down. There are a whole lot more people that finally got to the point where they were ready to file. They got emotionally ready. They did things that they wanted to do, which was like go through the things in the house, find things that they wanted to keep, certainly things of value, jewelry, and things like that. So they were ready to file, and then bam, the court shut down. So they've got that backlog of all those people. And then certainly coming out of this, there will be another group of probates. Yes, there will be some COVID-19 patients in that group, but the vast majority of probates will be the ones that just were back to the cycle of life. It was just their time, and it doesn't have anything to do with COVID-19. But I will tell you this, and this is my belief, that there's a lot of mental energy that goes into settling an estate. I know that because I've had to do that. So when you finally get your mindset right to where you're ready to settle the estate, you just want to move forward. This is a job, and it's a job that's landed in your lap on top of maybe your career, your children, your family, the softball practice, all of the things that made up your life. Now you have this big job called settling an estate and getting rid of all the belongings and all of that dropped in your lap. So these people, once they have made the decision to move forward, once they open that estate, they're saying, I'm ready to settle the estate. They're raising their hand and saying, I'm ready. Then that's where we come in. And if they choose to work with an investor, we can do the same thing we always do. We can offer to give them a quick, hassle-free cash sale. Probates will need to be actual sales. You cannot use creative finance strategies because remember, they have to liquidate the assets in the estate. Can you wholesale probates? Absolutely. So I really want you to grasp that these people, they need our help. We are providing a valuable service. If they choose to list with the realtor, they're going to do that. But if they call you, this is a golden opportunity to go in and help these people finish this process so that they can move forward with their lives. And you're not taking advantage of them, you're helping them, and to do what we do, which is to be a problem solver. We are, again, problem solvers that happens to involve a piece of property or properties. So that's what we do. Now, myth number 10 is that it can take forever to become a probate investing expert. That is not true. You can become a probate investing expert in your area. You can become the go-to expert in your area in just 6 short weeks. So I hope by now you know there never was a better time to dive into probates and build your business. And if you feel like you need a little more knowledge about this topic, I have something for you. My course, Probate Investing Simplified, opens this week. It will be open for a short time, and then it will close back again for, I really don't know how long that'll be, but a good while. So if you want to be poised to take advantage of this big influx of probate leads, if you're an investor and you want to add a boatload of leads to your business over the next few months and throughout the last half of the year, then probates is where you need to be working. So don't miss this short opportunity when I have my course open. It's called Probate Investing Simplified, and this is my promise to you. You can become the go-to expert in probate investing in your area in just 6 short weeks if you complete the course and implement the information. as you go along. So to learn more, just go over to my site, probateinvestingsimplified.com, and I'll put a link here in the show notes. And if you have any questions, like I said, I have a ton of information, a ton of podcasts, a ton of information on the Louisville Gals real estate blog. But if you have any questions, feel free to email me at Sharon@SharonVornholt.com. And I'll put all those links in the show notes.